Hmm. Hey there, drinking buddies. My name is Moss. You ever wonder how many of these we go through every year? How important is toothpaste? And how many tubes of toothpaste do we use every year? What about floss? Mouthwash? Tongue scrapers? That's a lot of stuff. Do we really need all of this just to keep our teeth, gums, and tongue healthy? Well, I'm not a dentist, but I do know that's a lot of waste. In this episode of Scientific Drinking, as part of a 3-part series on waste, we're going to be asking some questions about how much of this stuff we use every year and how important is it? Stick around. Cheers. If you were to believe every toothpaste, toothbrush, and mouthwash commercial out there, you'd be convinced that without any of these products, you'd end up with decaying gums, rotting teeth, and a constant case of bad breath known as chronic halitosis.
Whoa!
But the truth with this, like many other things, is a little bit more complicated. Can I borrow this? You see, on the side of every toothpaste box, you'll see a generous glob of toothpaste. Way more than is necessary. Even according to the American Dental Association, all you need is a pea-sized dollop on the tip of your toothbrush. But even that might not even be necessary, because almost all water supplies in the United States, at least all public water supplies, are fluoridized, meaning there's fluoride added to the water. Now, I'll explain why that's a little bit more important later, but the reality is we don't need all of these oral hygiene products. How much of the environmental impact can we save by not using these? And how much money can you save by not buying them? Toothbrushes, right? It's not something we could really do without. I mean, can you imagine not brushing your teeth for several days at a time? I certainly couldn't. I'd just feel kind of nasty, right? Well, we've been brushing for quite a while, so apparently our ancestors felt the same way. They used chewing sticks to clean their gums, and eventually in ancient China they used sticks with hog hair at the end to brush away the buildup on their teeth. But even until the 1920s, the practice of brushing really wasn't that common. In fact, only about 20% of Americans brushed at all. Can you imagine? But starting in World War II, it became mandatory for service members to brush every morning as part of their routine.
Here is a scene familiar to every part of the nation. Selective servicemen being examined for physical fitness prior to their induction in the Army. Would you be surprised to know that more men are rejected for bad teeth than for any other reason?
But the use of toothpaste wasn't itself widespread just yet. And as common sense tells us, the use of all of these toothpaste containers is kind of wasteful, right? All of these single-use plastics. Now, that term single-use plastic is going to come up a lot, not only in this episode, but in our entire series on waste, because it is, of course, a huge issue. Now, it's recommended that you change your toothbrush 2 to 3 times a year, every 2 to 4 months. That's according to the American Dental Association. But the reason for needing to change that isn't because of a degradation of the toothbrush itself, but because of the potential that that toothbrush picks up diseases or bacteria that isn't very friendly to your health, and you're just continuing to put that bacteria in your mouth day after day, increasing the chance of you remaining sick for a long period of time. So if you're noticing that you're sick a lot, maybe change your toothbrush. It might help a little bit. That being said, throwing away the toothbrush isn't your only option. There are methods of sanitizing your toothbrush to make it last longer. In fact, there's no real reason to throw away your toothbrush if you find a way to sanitize. Regular alcohol can do this. There are a lot of off-the-shelf disinfectants that you can use to purify your toothbrush without having to swap it out. The plastic itself, and as well as the nylon bristles, will last a very long time by themselves. Now, the use of toothpaste might be automatically mitigated or dismissed by water fluoridation. Water fluoridation happens naturally by itself. In fact, that's how the idea of water fluoridation came about. It was called Colorado brown stain, and in the city of Colorado Springs, Colorado, it was becoming quite a big issue. Many children and indeed adults had brown stains on their teeth, and no one really knew what caused it. There were all kinds of theories ranging from their diet to their environment, but what it really came down to was the fluoride level in their drinking water. Now, you might be saying right now, but why would we add fluoride to our water supply if it's causing brown teeth? Well, it wasn't just the existence of fluoride that was causing this, it was the ridiculous amount of fluoride in the water. As with anything, the dose makes the poison. We're talking about 11 milligrams per liter. Now 11 milligrams per liter is a lot, and to give you an idea of exactly how much that is, the average recommended dose of fluoride in your drinking water is about 0.6 to 1.2 milligrams per liter. Now that Colorado brown stain was being caused by a phenomenon called dental fluorosis. Now that's when you get too much fluoride and it actually starts eating away at your teeth. Now this is a big issue for kids, where growing in new teeth are very susceptible to this kind of erosion. When you're adults, it's less of an issue, and you can handle higher levels of fluoride. In addition to this, the ingestion of tremendous amounts of fluoride for children is a little bit dangerous, and it's why dental companies recommend small amounts of toothpaste on the toothbrush to help eliminate that issue. And it wasn't until 1945 that water fluoridation became a more common practice. The trial run was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where they first added fluoride to their water supply by choice. Now, another complaint about water fluoridation might be that it's just too expensive. But the reality is it only costs the average US taxpayer $1.11 a year to have healthy water. That's more than you would save by just eliminating your toothpaste, which you might actually be able to do. Now, fluoride, for the record, is a very reactive chemical. Pure fluoride by itself would be volatile just in the open atmosphere because it reacts to pretty much anything it's exposed to. Now, that's why it's so effective on our teeth, because it reacts with the surface and it gets rid of that bacteria and plaque buildup that happens naturally. So now let's move on to toothpaste, because we've talked about the fluoride in the water supply, the safe amount being about 0.6 to 1.2 milligrams per liter. So why are we adding toothpaste to our toothbrush, and why is it recommended that we add a little bit? Well, mostly that's a global recommendation. Not all places have fluoridated water supplies like the United States. In fact, most places don't. The United States was a pioneer in this kind of treatment of its water supplies. So when it's recommended that you add a little bit of toothpaste to your toothbrush, it's mostly for areas that don't have a fluoridated water supply. Now, a little disclaimer is that not everywhere in the United States has a fluoridated water supply. In fact, a lot of places that have their own wells or their own sources of drinking water don't have a fluoridated water supply. Aside from naturally occurring fluoridated water supplies, a lot of the public works water supplies just add it to the drinking water as a kind of post-processing mechanism, just to make sure that it gets in there to help promote good hygiene for those who drink it. So if you know you don't have a fluoridated water supply, do indeed include a little bit of toothpaste to your habit. However, if you're using a public works water supply, you actually don't need toothpaste. You see, because the risk of ingesting more fluoride is higher than the penalty of just not having additional fluoride on your toothbrush. Now that brings us to the next part, mouthwash. Now mouthwash has been around for a little while, especially in the 1800s, where a lot of tonics were advertised to help promote dental hygiene and eliminate bad breath. And that's the big driver for a lot of people using mouthwash, is the fear that you have bad breath. Now actually, this fear of bad breath is very common, but in 25% of cases, 1 in 4 cases, it's delusional halitosis. That's right, there's actually a name for this, delusional halitosis. And that means that although you think you have bad breath, you don't. Now, probably the most famous mouthwash example is Listerine. Now, for those that don't know, Listerine by itself has a history as a floor cleaner. You're pretty much using the exact same recipe for a floor cleaner and a cure to gonorrhea in your mouth. And although mouthwash is promoted as a cure for halitosis, bad breath, it might actually be a bad thing for your mouth. Remember how we talked about you adding in fluoride into your mouth in the form of toothpaste, fluoridized toothpaste being the most popular kind. For those of you who don't live with a fluoridated water supply, if you're adding toothpaste to your toothbrush to clean your mouth and then using mouthwash afterwards, you're just washing out the fluoride you just added with the toothpaste. So it's really kind of counterproductive. The use of mouthwash has been on the rise for a long time. In fact, it's generating about $3 billion in revenue every year, even though this product really hasn't been shown to do anything for your dental health. I mean, aside from what the company will tell you, it might help with your bad breath, and maybe if you've eaten a lot of garlic, it might help to swirl that around and get it out of there, but it's nothing that brushing wouldn't do by itself. And if you're following the recommended guidelines for using mouthwash, that's 40 milliliters per day, 20 in the morning and 20 at night. At that rate, if you use mouthwash every time you brush your teeth, you're gonna use up about 1 large container of mouthwash, 1 liter, every month. That's 12 containers every year. And I'm assuming each adult does this, as I'm sure Listerine would love them to do. That's 36 million containers a year of single-use plastic containers that we're just throwing away on something that really we don't need, at least don't need very often at all. Now, another claim by mouthwash companies is that it helps remove all the bad bacteria. It kills 99.9% of bacteria in your mouth. However, we do know that you need some of that bacteria. You need some of the bacteria in your body. You're made of a tremendous amount of bacteria. In fact, only a small percentage of your entire body is you, while a large percentage is made up of other bacteria and organisms that live symbiotically with you. So by disrupting the microbiome in your mouth, you might actually be causing more harm than good. Now, the next one is floss. Now, everyone's heard their dentist tell them that they need to floss often and floss regularly. Let's be honest, not everyone does. What's interesting about flossing is that although it seems to help with your gum health and reducing bleeding and reducing gingivitis, there doesn't seem to be any connection between flossing and your overall health in general. The fear is that if you don't floss, then you're building up bacteria in between your teeth that you're ingesting and in turn contributing to your overall ill health. However, there is absolutely no research that corroborates that hypothesis. And in fact, if you ask most dentists, what they'll tell you is that they encourage flossing because of what they see in their patients, which is just anecdotal evidence. That's not to say that flossing doesn't help with your oral health. Common sense should say that, yeah, it probably does, at least to a certain degree, as long as you're not over flossing or forcing the floss too hard into your gums. And in fact, a review of 12 different studies show that flossing does help reduce gingivitis, which isn't a fatal condition, but it is something that can be detrimental to your oral health. However, there is the possibility that all of these anecdotal observations of seeing people that don't floss having negative side effects might be secondary. Correlation isn't always a sign of causation, right? So maybe all of these people that aren't flossing regularly also maybe aren't brushing as regularly as they should. So maybe it's just that they aren't doing any kind of oral hygiene that they should. Now, the final thing we're going to talk about is tongue scrapers. The primary cause of bad breath generally isn't having too much bacteria in your teeth, but it's on your tongue. And tongue scrapers are supposed to reduce the chances of bad breath. But a key study in 2004 showed that there's no real difference between using a dedicated tongue scraper and just using your toothbrush. However, tongue scrapers have been known to reduce certain types of harmful bacteria in your mouth. So what we're really coming back to is all of these extra oral hygiene products, tongue scrapers, mouthwash, and even toothpaste might not actually be necessary, and even replacing your toothbrush could be mitigated or reduced entirely by using some kind of antiseptic or sterilization technique to remove the bad bacteria and contaminants on your toothbrush. Thus, we can virtually eliminate our environmental impact from oral hygiene by just switching to one clean and well-designed toothbrush, and that's it. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something like I did about oral hygiene, and join us next time in part 2 of our series on waste. Cheers. God, it tastes terrible after brushing your teeth. I think it's better.